"Excuse me, sir. Where do you think you're going?" Those words cut through the afternoon air like a knife. Xavier Blackstone freezes at the bottom of the aircraft stairs, his hand on the metal railing. He turns slowly to face Captain Morrison, a middle-aged pilot with graying hair and suspicion written all over his face. "I'm sorry," Xavier responds, his voice calm but firm. "This is a private aircraft, sir. You can't just walk up here like you own the place." But here's the thing, Xavier does own the place. That $12 million private jet? It's his. Imagine walking up to your own property, only to be told you don't belong there. Have you ever been judged by your appearance before people knew who you really were? Maybe someone looked at you in a store and assumed you couldn't afford anything. Or perhaps they saw you in a nice neighborhood and wondered what you were doing there. What you're about to witness shows exactly how assumptions can destroy careers in seconds. Because what Xavier said next changed everything, and you won't believe the pilot's reaction when he discovers the truth. Xavier stands there in his navy blue suit, leather briefcase in hand, gold watch catching the light. He's 34 years old, built a tech empire from nothing, and earned every dollar in his bank account. But right now, all Captain Morrison sees is a black man who supposedly doesn't belong near his aircraft. Other crew members start gathering around. Whispers float through the air. Xavier can feel the stares, the judgment, the assumptions being made about who he is and what he can afford. Before we dive deeper into this story, if you believe everyone deserves respect regardless of how they look, smash that subscribe button right now. And drop a comment telling me about a time when someone underestimated you, because those experiences shape who we become. Growing up in Detroit, Xavier learned that respect isn't given, it's earned. He worked his way up from nothing, never forgot his roots, and always treats people with dignity. That afternoon, he thought he was just catching a flight to close a major business deal. He had no idea he was about to teach someone the most expensive lesson of their career. The tension is thick. The pilot waits for an explanation. And what happens next will shock you and remind you why we should never judge people by their appearance. Let me tell you who Xavier Blackstone really is, because his story will blow your mind. 20 years ago, Xavier was a 14-year-old kid in Detroit, watching his single mother work 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. Their apartment was small, the neighborhood was rough, and most nights' dinner came from whatever was left in the cupboard. But his mom, Gloria, had one rule that changed everything. "Son, your circumstances don't define your future. Your choices do." Xavier took those words to heart. While other kids hung out on street corners, he spent hours at the local library learning about computers. He taught himself coding using old programming books and whatever internet access he could find. By 16, he was fixing computers for neighbors to make extra money. College wasn't easy. Xavier worked nights at a warehouse while studying computer science during the day. He graduated with honors, but also with $40,000 in student loans and big dreams that seemed impossible. His first job paid $35,000 a year at a small software company. Xavier watched his boss drive luxury cars and take expensive vacations while paying employees barely enough to survive. That's when he made a promise to himself. If he ever made it big, he'd remember what it felt like to struggle. The breakthrough came when Xavier was 28. He developed a software solution that helped small businesses manage their finances better. He started the company in his garage with $5,000 in savings and a whole lot of faith. The first year was brutal, living on ramen noodles, sleeping on a mattress on the floor, and wondering if he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. But the software worked. Small businesses loved it. Word spread fast. Within 2 years, Xavier's company was making millions. Within 5 years, he sold it for $200 million. That's when he bought the jet. Most people thought he was showing off, but Xavier had different reasons. Growing up, he'd never been on an airplane. His family couldn't afford vacations or business trips. The jet represented something deeper than luxury. It was freedom. Freedom to visit his mom whenever he wanted. Freedom to take his employees on company retreats. Freedom to fly to disaster areas and help communities in need. But owning expensive things as a young black man comes with challenges Xavier never expected. He'd walk into high-end stores and watch security guards follow him around. He'd sit in first-class airplane seats and see other passengers look surprised. He'd pull up to fancy restaurants in his car and watch valets assume he was someone's driver. Xavier learned to handle these situations with grace. He'd smile politely, show his identification when asked, and never let other people's assumptions change who he was. His success spoke for itself, and he refused to apologize for earning every dollar in his bank account. The morning of the incident, Xavier was flying to Los Angeles to meet with investors about his new company, a platform that helps young entrepreneurs access funding and mentorship. The deal was worth $50 million, and Xavier was excited about creating opportunities for kids who reminded him of his younger self. He packed his briefcase, kissed his mom goodbye, and headed to the private airport. It was supposed to be a routine business trip, just another day in the life of a successful entrepreneur. Xavier had no idea that Captain Morrison was about to challenge everything he'd worked for. Drop a comment if you've ever had to prove yourself in a situation like this. Because what happens next shows exactly why we should never underestimate anyone based on how they look. The Meridian Private Aviation Terminal looks like something out of a luxury magazine. Glass walls stretch from floor to ceiling, marble floors shine under bright lighting, and leather chairs are arranged around coffee tables that cost more than most people's cars. This isn't your regular airport. This is where the wealthy fly. Xavier pulls his black Mercedes into the parking area reserved for aircraft owners. He checks his watch, 2:15 p.m. His flight to Los Angeles is scheduled for 3 p.m., giving him plenty of time to review his presentation one more time. He steps out of his car wearing a perfectly tailored navy suit, white dress shirt, and a silk tie that cost more than some people's rent. His leather briefcase contains contracts worth millions, and his confident walk shows a man who belongs exactly where he is. Inside the terminal, Xavier approaches the reception desk where a young woman named Lisa greets him warmly. "Good afternoon, Mr. Blackstone. Your aircraft is ready for departure. Captain Morrison and his crew are conducting their pre-flight inspection now." "Thank you, Lisa. I'll head out in a few minutes." But as Xavier walks toward the terminal doors leading to the tarmac, he notices something odd. Conversations stop mid-sentence when he passes. Eyes follow his movement across the room. A businessman in an expensive suit leans over to whisper something to his companion, both of them glancing in Xavier's direction. Xavier has experienced this before. The stares, the whispers, the unspoken questions about whether he really belongs in spaces like this. He straightens his shoulders and keeps walking, refusing to let other people's curiosity affect his confidence. Outside on the tarmac, his Gulfstream G650 sits waiting. All white with blue racing stripes and Blackstone Enterprises printed in bold letters on the side. It's beautiful, powerful, and represents everything Xavier has worked to achieve. Captain Morrison stands near the aircraft talking to two ground crew members. He's a man in his early 50s with salt and pepper hair, wearing a crisp pilot's uniform with gold stripes on his sleeves. His posture suggests authority, but his expression shows something else entirely, skepticism. As Xavier approaches, he hears fragments of conversation. "Don't usually see his type around here. Probably works for someone important. Wonder who he's flying with today." The ground crew members, both young men who look fresh out of aviation school, stop talking when they notice Xavier getting closer. One of them, a tall guy with blonde hair, nudges his colleague and nods toward Xavier. Captain Morrison turns around, his eyes scanning Xavier from head to toe. There's no warmth in his greeting, No professional courtesy that Xavier typically receives from flight crews. Instead, there's suspicion, doubt, and something that makes Xavier's stomach tighten. Xavier maintains his professional demeanor despite the uncomfortable atmosphere. He's dealt with situations like this before, and he knows exactly how to handle himself. But today feels different. Today, the tension in the air is thicker than usual. He has no idea that Captain Morrison is about to make the biggest mistake of his career. Xavier walks confidently toward his aircraft, briefcase in hand, ready to board for his Los Angeles meeting. But before he can reach the stairs, Captain Morrison steps directly into his path. "Excuse me, sir. Where do you think you're going?" The words hang in the air like a challenge. Xavier stops, slightly surprised by the aggressive tone. He's used to professional greetings from flight crews, not interrogations. "I'm boarding my flight to Los Angeles," Xavier responds calmly, maintaining eye contact with the pilot. Captain Morrison's expression hardens. "Your flight? Sir, this is a private aircraft. You can't just walk up here without proper authorization." Xavier feels the familiar sting of being questioned about his right to be somewhere, but he keeps his voice steady. "I understand your concern, Captain. I'm Xavier Blackstone, the owner of this aircraft." The pilot lets out a short laugh that sounds more like a scoff. "The owner? Sir, I think you might be confused. Maybe you're looking for the commercial terminal? It's about 2 miles down the road." The disrespect in Morrison's voice is unmistakable. Xavier's jaw tightens slightly, but he maintains his professional composure. Years of dealing with situations like this have taught him that staying calm is always the best approach. "Captain Morrison, I can assure you I'm not confused. This is my aircraft, and I have a 3 p.m. departure scheduled for Los Angeles. Sir, I'm going to need to see some identification and proof of authorization before you take another step toward this aircraft," Morrison demands, crossing his arms over his chest. The 2 ground crew members have stopped their work and are now watching the confrontation unfold. One of them pulls out his phone, clearly ready to call security if things escalate further. Xavier reaches into his jacket pocket and pulls out his wallet. He hands Morrison his driver's license and a Platinum American Express card with Xavier Blackstone printed clearly across the bottom. Morrison examines the cards with obvious skepticism. Anyone can get fake IDs these days. "Do you have any documentation proving you're authorized to board this specific aircraft?" "I have the aircraft registration and ownership papers in my briefcase," Xavier replies, his patience wearing thin but his voice still controlled. "That's convenient," Morrison says with a smirk. "Look, sir, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but I've been flying private jets for 15 years. I know what aircraft owners look like, and they don't usually show up dressed like." He pauses, looking Xavier up and down, like they're trying to prove something. By now, the confrontation has attracted attention from inside the terminal. Several passengers and staff members have gathered near the glass doors, watching the drama unfold on the tarmac. Their whispered conversations create a buzz of background noise that makes Xavier's embarrassment even worse. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to keep your cool when someone disrespected you? Let me know in the comments, because what Xavier does next shows incredible self-control. "Captain Morrison," Xavier says, his voice remaining steady despite the growing crowd of onlookers. "I understand you're trying to do your job, but you're making assumptions that are both incorrect and inappropriate." "Assumptions?" Morrison raises his voice, clearly frustrated. "Sir, I'm trying to prevent a security breach. This aircraft belongs to a very successful businessman, and I'm not going to let some random person—" "Some random person?" Xavier interrupts, his composure finally cracking slightly. "Captain, you don't know who I am, yet you've decided I don't belong here based on what exactly?" Morrison's face flushes red. "Look, I don't have time for this nonsense. Either you produce legitimate authorization to board this aircraft, or I'm calling airport security." And frankly, you're lucky I haven't already. The ground crew members exchange nervous glances. Even they seem uncomfortable with their captain's aggressive approach, but neither speaks up to challenge their superior. More people have gathered to watch the confrontation. Cell phones are out, recording the interaction. Xavier realizes this situation is about to become very public, very quickly. What happens next will change everything, and Captain Morrison has no idea he's about to destroy his own career with his next words. Captain Morrison's patience has completely run out. His voice rises to a level that everyone within 50 feet can hear clearly. That's it. I've had enough of this charade. He snaps, pulling his phone from his pocket. Security? Yes, this is Captain Morrison at Meridian Aviation. I need someone out here immediately. We have a trespassing situation on the tarmac. Xavier can't believe what he's hearing. Captain, you're making a serious mistake. If you would just look at my documentation. Documentation? Right, Morrison says with heavy sarcasm while keeping the phone pressed to his ear. Yes, security, he's claiming to own the aircraft, but obviously that's impossible. He's well dressed, I'll give him that, probably trying to pull some kind of con. The crowd near the terminal has grown larger. Xavier notices at least 6 people with their phones out, recording everything. This confrontation is about to go viral, and he knows it. Fine, Xavier says, opening his briefcase with deliberate calm. Let me show you exactly who you're dealing with. He pulls out a folder containing official documents and hands them to Morrison. Aircraft registration certificate, proof of ownership, insurance documents, and my pilot's license, which, by the way, qualifies me to fly this aircraft myself. Morrison snatches the papers and examines them with exaggerated scrutiny, holding them up to the light as if checking for watermarks. The documents are clearly legitimate, official seals, proper signatures, high-quality paper stock. These could be fake, Morrison announces loudly enough for the growing crowd to hear. Anyone with a decent printer and some creativity could make documents like this. I've seen it before. One of the ground crew members, clearly uncomfortable with the situation, approaches his captain. Sir, those documents look pretty official to me. Maybe we should. Did I ask for your opinion? Morrison cuts him off sharply. Get back to your duties. Xavier's hands tremble slightly, not from fear, but from the effort it takes to control his anger. Captain Morrison, those documents contain serial numbers you can verify with the FAA in less than 5 minutes. The registration number on that certificate matches the number painted on the tail of this aircraft. Look, friend, Morrison says, his tone dripping with condescension. I don't know what kind of operation you're running, but it ends here. Real aircraft owners don't show up alone, arguing with pilots about their credentials. They have assistants, security details, entourages. They certainly don't need to convince anyone they belong. Xavier's voice remains controlled, but there's steel underneath. So in your professional opinion, what do real aircraft owners look like, Captain? Morrison steps closer, lowering his voice, but not enough to prevent the crowd from hearing. Let me be very clear about something. I've been in this business long enough to know who belongs in these spaces and who doesn't. People like you might be able to fool some folks with fancy clothes and forged papers, but you can't fool me. The words hit Xavier like a physical blow. People like me? You know exactly what I mean. Morrison continues, his mask of professionalism completely gone now. This is a private aviation facility, not some urban airport where anyone can walk up and claim they own million-dollar aircraft. We have standards here, and frankly, you don't meet them. The ground crew members look horrified. Even they recognize that their captain has crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. One of them steps back, clearly wanting distance from what's happening. Xavier stands perfectly still for a moment, letting Morrison's words sink in. The crowd has gone silent, everyone understanding they've just witnessed something significant. Standards, Xavier repeats quietly. What standards would those be, Captain? Morrison realizes his mistake too late. The color drains from his face as he sees the phone's recording, the shocked expressions on people's faces, and the deadly calm in Xavier's eyes. What I meant was, Morrison stammers, but the damage is done. This is where things get really intense. Smash that like button if you're ready to see what happens next, because Xavier's response is about to end this pilot's career forever. The security guards Morrison called finally arrive, jogging across the tarmac toward the confrontation. But they have no idea they're about to witness the most expensive mistake in private aviation history. Xavier looks at the pilot, then at the crowd, then back at Morrison. When he speaks, his voice is calm, controlled, and absolutely devastating. Captain Morrison, do you have any idea who you're talking to? The pilot's confident smirk falters. For the first time since this confrontation began, doubt creeps into his expression. What Xavier says next will destroy Morrison's career and teach everyone watching a lesson they'll never forget. Xavier stands perfectly still, his eyes locked on Captain Morrison. The crowd has gone completely silent, everyone sensing that something major is about to happen. When Xavier finally speaks, his voice is calm, measured, and absolutely devastating. Captain Morrison, my name is Xavier Blackstone. I'm the founder and CEO of Blackstone Technologies, which sold for $200 million 3 years ago. I currently run Blackstone Ventures, which manages over $500 million in investments. This aircraft, tail number N847XB, was purchased by my company for $12.3 million 18 months ago. Morrison's face goes pale, but Xavier isn't finished. More importantly, Captain, I'm about to make 3 phone calls that will change your life forever. The first call goes to Marcus Washington, my attorney, who specializes in discrimination lawsuits. The second goes to your employer, Meridian Aviation Management. The third goes to every private aviation company in this country, because word travels fast in this industry. Xavier pulls out his phone, his movements deliberate and controlled. But before I make those calls, I want you to understand something. You didn't just insult a successful businessman today. You revealed exactly who you are when you think nobody important is watching. Morrison tries to interrupt. Mr. Blackstone, I think there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, Captain. You said people like me don't meet your standards. You questioned my documentation, called security on me, and treated me like a criminal for walking up to my own property. All because of how I look. The security guards who Morrison called have arrived, but they stop short when they hear Xavier's words. One of them recognizes the name Blackstone Technologies and whispers to his partner. Xavier dials his first number. Marcus? It's Xavier. I need you to document everything about what just happened at Meridian Aviation. We have multiple witnesses and video evidence of discrimination. Yes, I want a full investigation. Morrison's hands are shaking now. He realizes his career is about to end, but he can't stop talking. Sir, please, I was just doing my job. We have protocols for security. Your protocols don't include racial profiling, Captain. Xavier responds while dialing his second number. Rebecca? Call David Chun at Meridian Aviation Management. Tell him Xavier Blackstone needs to speak with him immediately about Captain Morrison. Yes, it's urgent. The ground crew members are backing away from Morrison like he has a contagious disease. They know they're witnessing a career-ending moment and want no part of it. Mr. Blackstone, please. Morrison begs, his arrogance completely gone. I have a family, a mortgage. I've been flying for 15 years without any incidents. This was just a misunderstanding. Xavier looks at him with a mixture of disappointment and resolve. Captain, 15 years of flying experience should have taught you to treat people with respect, regardless of their appearance. Instead, you chose to judge me based on your own biases. His phone rings. David? This is Xavier Blackstone. One of your pilots just called security on me for trying to board my own aircraft. Yes, Captain Morrison. No, David, I'm not interested in apologies right now. I'm interested in action. Morrison tries one last desperate attempt. Sir, I apologize. I made a mistake. It won't happen again. Xavier ends his call and looks directly at Morrison. You're right, Captain. It won't happen again. Because after today, you won't be flying private jets anymore. The power has completely shifted. Morrison realizes he's destroyed his own career with his assumptions and prejudice. What happens next will serve as a warning to anyone who thinks they can discriminate without consequences. Within 30 minutes of Xavier's phone call, David Chen from Meridian Aviation Management arrives at the terminal, his face grim and his stride urgent. He walks directly to Xavier, completely ignoring Captain Morrison. Mr. Blackstone, I am deeply sorry about this incident. This behavior is completely unacceptable and goes against everything our company stands for. Xavier remains professional, even though he has every right to be furious. David, I appreciate you coming personally, but sorry isn't enough. Your pilot made assumptions about me that were both wrong and discriminatory. You're absolutely right. Chen responds without hesitation. Captain Morrison, you're terminated immediately. Security will escort you off the property, and your final paycheck will be mailed to your address. Morrison's face goes white. David, please let me explain. There's nothing to explain. Chen cuts him off. Your actions today have exposed this company to a massive lawsuit and damaged our reputation. Pack your things. But the consequences don't stop there. Within hours, news of the incident spreads throughout the private aviation industry. It's a small, tight-knit community where everyone knows everyone else's business. By evening, Morrison's name is on a private blacklist shared among aviation companies across the country. No reputable charter service will hire him. His 15-year career is over, destroyed by his own prejudice and poor judgment. Xavier watches Morrison being escorted away and feels no satisfaction, only disappointment. This didn't have to happen, he tells Chen. All he had to do was treat me with basic human respect. The ground crew members who witnessed everything approach Xavier hesitantly. The blonde one speaks first. Mr. Blackstone, we want you to know that not everyone here shares Captain Morrison's views. What he did was wrong. Xavier looks at both young men. I appreciate that. But remember what you saw today. When you see discrimination happening, don't just stand by silently. Speak up. Do the right thing, even when it's uncomfortable. The second crew member nods. We will, sir. This was a learning experience we'll never forget. Chen ensures Xavier's new pilot arrives within the hour. A professional woman who greets him with the respect he deserved from the beginning. She reviews his flight plan without questioning his credentials or making assumptions about his wealth. Before boarding, Xavier addresses the crowd that witnessed the confrontation. Today was unfortunate, but it's also a reminder that we all have the power to choose how we treat others. Choose respect. Choose dignity. Choose to see people as individuals, not stereotypes. What would you have done in Xavier's situation? Share your thoughts below, because handling discrimination with grace while demanding accountability takes incredible strength. As Xavier finally boards his aircraft, he reflects on the day's events. One man's career is over, but maybe the people who witnessed this will think twice before making assumptions about others. The lesson is clear. Respect costs nothing, but the lack of it can cost everything. 3 weeks later, Xavier sits in his office reflecting on that day at the airport. The incident has stayed with him, not because of the humiliation, but because of what it revealed about society's ongoing challenges. You know what bothered me most? Xavier tells his assistant Rebecca during a meeting. It wasn't just Morrison's behavior. It was how easily people accepted his assumptions, how quickly they believed I didn't belong there. The incident sparked real change at Meridian Aviation. David Chen implemented mandatory diversity training for all staff members. New policies require respectful treatment of all clients regardless of appearance, and any discrimination complaints now trigger immediate investigation. But the impact went far beyond one company. Video of the confrontation went viral, reaching millions of people worldwide. The hashtag #RespectEarned started trending, with people sharing their own stories of being judged by their appearance. Xavier received hundreds of messages from young entrepreneurs who felt inspired by how he handled the situation. "You showed us that success isn't just about making money," wrote one college student. "It's about maintaining dignity when others try to take it away." The aviation industry took notice too. Several companies reached out, inviting Xavier to speak about diversity and inclusion in luxury travel. His story became a case study in business schools about the cost of discrimination and the importance of treating all customers with respect. But for Xavier, the real victory wasn't Morrison getting fired or companies changing their policies. It was the conversation that started afterward. "Success means nothing if we don't use it to make things better for others," Xavier explains. "That day wasn't about proving I could afford a private jet. It was about proving that everyone deserves basic human dignity, regardless of how they look or where they come from." The lesson is simple but powerful. When we stand up to discrimination, we don't just defend ourselves. We defend everyone who comes after us. So there you have it, the story of how one man's assumptions destroyed his career in less than an hour. But this story isn't really about Captain Morrison losing his job. It's about something much bigger than that. Let's talk about the real lessons here, because they apply to every single one of us. First, never judge people based on their appearance. Xavier walked up to that aircraft looking exactly like what he was, a successful businessman. But Morrison saw something else entirely, and those assumptions cost him everything. How many times do we make similar judgments about people we meet? How many opportunities do we miss because we decide someone isn't worth our respect? Second, success doesn't change how people see you. It just makes the consequences of their assumptions more expensive. Xavier could have been a janitor, a teacher, or a student, and he still would have deserved basic human dignity. The fact that he owned the jet made Morrison's behavior costly, but it shouldn't have taken wealth to earn respect. Third, when discrimination happens, staying calm and professional is often more powerful than losing your temper. Xavier didn't yell, curse, or threaten Morrison. He simply revealed the truth and let Morrison's own actions speak for themselves. That's real power. But here's the most important lesson. We all have a choice in how we treat others. Every single day, we interact with people whose stories we don't know. The person serving your coffee might be working 3 jobs to support their family. The young person in the expensive store might have earned every dollar they're spending. The family at the restaurant might be celebrating the biggest achievement of their lives. You never know who you're really talking to, and that's exactly the point. It shouldn't matter who they are. Everyone deserves respect, kindness, and basic human dignity. Morrison learned this lesson the hard way, but you don't have to. Starting today, you can choose to see people as individuals, not stereotypes. You can choose to give others the benefit of the doubt. You can choose to treat everyone with the same respect you'd want for yourself or your family. This story went viral because it touched something deep inside people. The universal experience of being judged, underestimated, or dismissed. We've all been there. We've all felt the sting of someone's assumptions about who we are or what we're capable of. If this story inspired you, hit subscribe and ring that notification bell, because we share stories like this every week. Stories that remind us of our shared humanity and challenge us to be better. But more importantly, I want to hear from you. Share your own experiences in the comments below. Have you ever been underestimated because of how you look? Have you witnessed discrimination and wished you'd spoken up? Have you caught yourself making assumptions about someone else? Let's build a community where we learn from each other's experiences. The conversation starts here, but it continues in your daily life. The next time you interact with someone, whether it's a cashier, a colleague, or a stranger on the street, remember Xavier's story. Remember Captain Morrison's mistake. Remember that respect costs nothing but means everything. And remember, you never know who you're really talking to. That person might just surprise you. Because at the end of the day, we're all human beings trying to make our way in this world. We all deserve dignity. We all deserve respect. And we all have the power to make someone's day better or worse with our words and actions. Choose wisely.